Hello, everyone. Welcome back once again to the Tetracast. If you haven't listened to this podcast before, this is where we get the staff and contributors of RPGsite.net to get together once a week and talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale, and I've got a large crew here with me today. Joining me, I have George Foster.
Hello, everyone.
Joshua Torres.
I'm a MOBA player once again, reborn.
Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Hey.
And Chaomin Wu.
Hello, guys.
So this is an interesting week for the podcast because this week didn't really have a big headliner in terms of what to talk about, but it did have a pretty major release for at least one of us, maybe two of us, that we're going to want to dive into right from the header. So not much in terms of announcements, in terms of big new exciting reveals or big new trailers or even release dates. But we did recently have the launch of Genshin Impact 2.0, which is Chaomin Wu's bread and butter, and what I assume what he's been playing mostly all this week. That we also had the New World beta and a couple other surprises that released this week. So in terms of games we've been playing, there's a lot of interesting things to dive into.
Well, I think I'm stuck in gacha hell again. You know, it's the mobile game. But you know what? The thing is, a lot of the gacha games I play have like a huge drought going on right now. I know it's COVID and all, but like if I was playing Grand Blue, the game was having like one of the worst droughts I've ever experienced in a while. So
they had the Unite and Fight clan war going on this weekend.
Yeah, but
right?
Guild Wars it's like the worst event in the game, but it keeps the game alive, you know?
And the weird thing about that, because that has like a weird tangential connection with Genshin, where in Grand Blue's Guild War, like it's competing guilds with real players for points, and then there's like cutoff rankings for it. So like to make the top 8,000, you have to make this amount of points with your guild, and they had to lower the threshold. From what I heard from friends who play it, they lowered that threshold from the previous one because Genshin Impact 2.0 came out, and they didn't want to like have people basically have to go super hard on it at the expense of cutting to their Genshin Impact time, because of course all like big Japanese developers like are well aware of Genshin Impact's impact, and it having a big update now. They have to be all aware of like, okay, our players will probably want to play this, so we got to be sort of lenient about that, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I got a friend that's trying to get top 2,000, so he's like skipping Genshin content. He's like, can you play my account? I gotta do this Guild Wars thing.
So let's dive into it. What is Genshin Impact 2.0? Why is there a 2.0 at the end of this now? Is this a sequel, or is it just a big update?
2.0 is a massive update. You're basically get to explore Inazuma now, so it's like a whole new region to explore, right? I know you can't fully explore it yet, but as of the moment, there is 3 islands you can explore out of it, and that's a lot of content to begin with.
Yeah, that's Narukami Island, Kanazuka, and Yashiori Island. The interesting thing I heard about this is, even though I did, I kind of clowned on it for having only released 3 of the 6 promised islands coming in this new Inazuma. I think people are saying that this update is so big that it's basically equivalent to all the content that Genshin Impact launched with. So this is what you can do in these new regions is like there's so much to it that it feels like it's like almost like a sequel to the game in terms of like the game launched with the Liyue and what was the other Mondstadt region, and the content in here is equivalent to what you can do over there at launch. So there's just a lot of new stuff to play around with.
Yeah.
So as someone who has not played Genshin, but I've seen the fan art, I've seen tons of people sharing the new trailers for the new characters or whatever. When you say there's a new region, is it like a completely separate map that you have to travel to, like through some sort of icon or some fast travel or whatever, or is it like an expansion of the current map where now you can travel further east or west or whatever?
It's an expansion of the current map. I mean, technically, you could see where Inazuma is in the game, but you can't travel there before. Like back then, it's like, well, you had to do a story to get there because what is it? If you try to travel there, a storm will take you away. So you have to do a story, like the story to get there.
Oh, I see.
How
So
far away
basically,
is it? Like,
Like
when you
super
talk,
far. But there's a like if you actually manage to get a Yaka now, right? Or using Kea, you could use like an ice bridge to travel across the sea.
okay, so it is actually like, is it south of what is it?
Southeast.
Southeast of where the current region is was at launch. Those two regions. Okay.
Yeah. But you could like if you try to do the ice bridge thing, a storm would just prevent you from going there. So you have to take the boat from the story to get there. I also feel like they got like new writers for this whole thing because when you get to Inazuma, there's like a lot of like trying to like world building like really too hastily. Like I feel like they're like trying to introduce you to like Inazuma like right away, like all their politics and all this stuff. Like when you get there, it's not. I don't feel it's like the same writers.
Well, what do you mean by that? So, what I remember from the Genshin Impact story, like I only played maybe a month and a half to 2 months after launch, it was very somewhat bare bones. I mean, there was still a link there that like there are cool story scenes, funny stuff, but it was very secular, very much about like the world around you, and you're kind of visiting as like this traveler from another world, so you're kind of seeing it from an outsider perspective. Well, what do you mean that you
Well,
feel Inazuma
like
has a
I just feel like what is it? There's a lot of exposition when you get there. It's like
okay?
they try to explain a lot of things. Because the first thing when you get to Inazuma, they'll be like, "Oh, it's like you're gonna get conned by these people here." So it's like, what are you gonna do? And they're like trying to introduce you all these like system and the politics and how you run. And you can't even explore the island fully. You try to explore, people will say, "You don't have a passport. I'm gonna take you away."
So
Like,
there's more intimate thing like your player character. It's a silent protagonist, but your player character feels more involved in the events going on now.
the protagonist is a lot more involved. I think the protagonist was a lot more involved since like version 1.6. I think there was this massive update where you go and there's a massive spoiler. I don't think I want to spoil it, but in that
Okay.
event, it actually puts the character like in a lot bigger spot, and there's a lot more highlights with the traveler.
So when you play the base version of the game, is like so you pick? I've seen people like sharing like funny dialogue options that you make as the character, but they're just not voiced. It's implied that you speak, but you
It's
don't
not
actually.
voice,
I
but
see. So that's
unless you
almost like a
encounter
Western RPG
unless you
in some ways.
encounter the other traveler, let's say, because you get to either pick a male or a female traveler, the
Right.
other traveler will be voiced, right?
So it's almost like so
Maybe
basically you pick
Persona?
you pick one of the two, and the other one becomes an NPC.
Yeah, well, maybe antagonist, I guess. I don't know. Like I don't know where they're setting it up to be, right? But was it like in Persona 2, right? If you play as Internal Punishment and Innocent Sin, the other one gets to talk, but in their other game they become silent protagonists and you're playing them, right?
But we talked about when we were introducing 2.0 when it was announced last week or the week before, how it had like 3 islands, but you could only visit a portion of them right away. Is that what the case is? Like right now, you can only go to the first of the 3 sections of Inazuma.
Basically. But it's still a lot of content. There's a lot of new puzzles. What when you go there is like a lot of places filled with like electricity traps. Like the fields are like all covering electricity, right? Because their Archon is like it's using electric power, right?
What is an
Okay.
Archon? So
Archon's like it's kind of like a god, like a reincarnation of like the 7 gods that protect their region,
Yeah.
and
So I think it's an elemental god. There's like a fire
oh,
god, a wind
is
god.
each region like assigned one of these?
yeah, the first region is Mondstadt, and that is protected by the wind god, which is
Oh,
Venti.
okay, I get it.
Obviously, that's Venti's current form right now, right? He has a different form before. Then when you get to Leyue, the Archon there is Song Li. So now we get the new Archon is Raiden Shogun, which is a Electro Archon, right? So she's gonna be like the big.
I've seen her in trailers. She's not playable. She's just an important character. Is that how it is?
Well, she's actually a boss, if I tell you.
Oh, I
To be
see.
honest, but she's gonna be playable. There's already like leaks that she's gonna be like the next banner characters, and
Because
uh,
Venti's playable. I know he's like super popular,
I
right?
think the biggest thing that people didn't expect her to be is she's actually a polearm user, not a sword user.
Oh, that is weird. Like, I don't know anything. I don't know much about this game, but everything seemed to suggest that she'd be a sword user.
Because she pulls you watch the
Right.
trailer, she pulls a sword out of her chest. Have you seen that scene, right?
Well,
Okay.
that's kind of very like archetypal. I feel like you could find that sort of imagery in a lot of places. I mean,
But
Tales of Arise sort of does the same thing.
But yeah, that if you've seen that scene, is like she pulls the sword out of her chest, so you expect that to be, she's a sword user. But how it works is she's sort of like Child if you have Child from Genshin, right? Genshin, Child uses two different type of weapons. He's a bow user, but if you activate his like special ability, it turns into two daggers, and nobody has two daggers in this game.
I remember you
that's right.
talking about that. I forget if you were just streaming it or if it was some other context, but yeah, I remember you showing us that weird. It's kind of the specific trait that character had with the two daggers.
Like Shogun has the exact same kind of concept. If she uses her special ability, she gets to use a sword, right? Other than that, she's a polearm user.
So one thing that I always see whenever there's a big new Genshin update is people obviously sharing on social media like their roles about what whether how quickly they got the new character, how much, or if they get 2 in 1 or whatever. It seems like, based on my ignorant observation from afar, that most people were really going for that new cryo sword user with the light blue hair. Is that like the one to get for this update? Or
She's a bit
do I have it
weird.
wrong?
She has Mona's kind of dash.
He's a Yaka, right?
Yeah, this is Ayaka. She basically goes underwater kind of thing, then comes out like as soon as you let go of her dash button. It's really hard to control, but if you can get used to this, it actually is really cool. It plays like a ninja sort of,
But is she the one to get? Is that like the best role you can get at the moment, or it kind of depends?
Well, she's the best character you can. Well, not like best character, but she's the character that people have been hyping up since the beginning of the game.
That's what I've been noticing.
Because she has like this princess type background. She has Sayori Hayaman's voice. Hayama.
If I'm still playing this game, I would be 100% trying to get her.
Yeah, it's like it has like a ton of hype going for it, and you actually did her story. Her story is actually massive hype too. Her story is one of the best story events in this game. So,
So give us a synopsis without spoiling. Like, why is it hype? Why?
Just search up pizza. That's all you gotta do.
Huh?
Wait,
What?
I feel like I'm gonna like run
What did
into
I
a bunch
miss?
of unrelated pages. I need a little bit more context of pizza.
Wow.
Or is it just Genshin pizza will get me there?
Genshin pizza will get you there. Traveler introduced pizza to something.
Imagine just searching
spoil
for
it
pizza
completely.
to like get food, and then you just get spoiled
Just
on
type
this
in
like hype
Genshin
story.
word pizza and you will find
All
it.
right.
I
Okay.
just wanted pizza.
Okay. So here's my first. If I search Genshin pizza, what I get is a food item called mushroom pizza. So apparently, I need
Okay,
more
well.
context than that.
You probably need a little bit more context with that one.
All right. Genshin pizza Ayaka. Here's a YouTube video. I'm not going to watch it, but give it to Kamisato Ayaka where to find the recipe. So there's a quest where you give this person mushroom pizza. Is that it?
I want to search it up now. I don't know. Is that it, Chow? What he described?
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay. All
But-
right.
Storyline is actually good. I would recommend trying it. Or just look at YouTube. The speedrunners are like rushing through these games. I mean, they already get to fight the boss, and I haven't even got that far yet.
Yeah, it seems like there'll be, of course, your initial wave of people who rush the content and whatnot. But is there?
Sorry, I'm still reading up on this pizza
Yeah.
stuff. So the quest is to give her mushroom pizza. So that first hit that I got on Google about how to make the mushroom pizza on the Genshin Impact wiki was actually relevant. So there, I've learned more about Genshin today in the most odd roundabout manner than I expected. So
Are there any other like new gameplay features or systems that are wildly different than what the initial content launch was? Like, and also they have the reputation system now that was added in a later patch. But was there anything as big as that one recent update where you had like you could sail a boat to like other islands? And
You can. You just in what is it in Inuzama, like you get to use a waypoint finder to summon the boat. So they have all the mechanics from like the previous patch all thrown into this island.
Can you customize that boat?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yet.
Well,
So you can't soon?
Maybe a different patch maybe will add it to it, but you can't customize that boat yet.
Yeah, but do you feel good about like the future of this game now after this patch?
I'm not quite sure. Like, if they can release these updates a lot quicker, then yeah, the future would be right. But if they can't, if they just took it like how long they did to release this patch, then I don't see it being that bright though.
I remember when we were going through like 1.6, 1.7, you had a few opportunities on the podcast to talk about how it was just kind of like diversionary, where it's like, here's a summer event, or here's an event where they add a weird sort of like hide and seek mini game sort of thing. It just kind of felt like they were just treading water a bit, and this sort of 2.0 impact is what people were really waiting for. And it sounds like if they've divided it the way that you described with like the three parts of this region, they could just dole those out in 2.1, 2.2 or whatever, and hopefully kind of keep up the pace. At least I suppose that would be the goal, or what people would like the most.
Yeah, like I would say it's like if they didn't take like 8 months on filler content, I don't think any of the fan base would have been pissed and gone away. Because a lot of people I know that play Genshin kind of like all quit, or they're like a casual on and off phase. It's like if they were releasing content, maybe like in every 4 months, if there was like a new region. But if you can just explore some of it, it's like I think they would be a lot more positive.
Yeah, is it still like the same loop of gameplay? Like after you're sort of done with, all the new content. I mean, obviously you're not done with all the new content, but like when you're at the very end game now, do you start to grind like the weekly bosses and hopefully get a good drop, and then wait
They're
another
still
few days for
there.
dailies? Well,
They're
is
still
there
there.
did they add anything more like to vary it up day by day?
Well, they haven't. They let you choose which one you want to fight, right? Because there's more boss now. You just need to kill free whatever bosses to complete the daily, right? But I think the biggest change is that you can convert the materials to other things if your drop wasn't good. So I guess that's a big, huge plus. It's like, oh, I always get this thing. Now I can use this other material to convert it into something else.
Yeah, at least you're getting something back on like the early days where it's just like, well, I got a shit drop. I can't really do anything with it. It's like just another week, just another day.
Wait, right? Now you can convert it if you get the shit drop you didn't want, right? So.
But is that like all the significant stuff right now for this new Genshin Impact update? I know a lot of people have been going in on it.
Yeah, there's lots of things to cover. I mean, there's like the electro gunum or whatever you like to call it. This is like the main mechanic in this new island. You had to like activate this electric flower to travel to like this electric barriers. It's kind of like a really weird thing, and it also lets you like magnetically pull like certain flowers in midair, like a hook shot sort of thing, right? It's pretty cool.
Is it one of those? Is it like kind of like in Breath of the Wild, where you're using like that device to kind of levitate stuff and like kind of move stuff around? Or
sort of similar, but
okay.
It's all placed in there. You can't really fix the location, right?
Okay, so is it on just fixed places? It's not like free form like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just on paper, that just seems like it's an interesting idea to give that unique sort of traversal puzzle nature to this region, rather than just giving it like a general theme or overview, but it ends up just being decoration. Like, it actually changes how you navigate in this area. And I know when they added that small, I don't know the name of this, but on the original map, they added that small area that had the ice mountain shortly after release. And you had brought up that in that region, you have to actually manage like your body temperature, you have to have a right consumable before going there. So at least that seems like it changes up a little bit of like the resource management, or what you actually have to be cognizant of as you play in this new region. It's not just go there to see what the story of the characters are. It's actually like you gotta play
there's
through
a
it a
visual
little bit
identity
differently.
that spurs on into that translates into gameplay as well, and that's really cool because all the screenshots I'd seen of the environment of this region is gorgeous. Like the Genshin has amazing, beautiful environments, especially in the UA, but this one is. They've really amped it up once again, especially during nighttime. You see the sakura bloom, and it says that dark blue and pink contrast. It looks really good, really nice. I'm very impressed.
So do you have all the new characters yet, or have you?
I'm
good is your luck
old
been?
character. I'm missing old characters. I'm missing
Ooh.
Albedo and who else? I think I'm just missing Albedo.
Wait, so you're only missing one character out of all the characters in the game right now?
Wait. I'm missing Albedo and the last guy that recently released, Kaede Kyu. Wait, not Kaede. What's his last name again? I forgot.
Kiryu,
Yeah, you would have the best. You would have the best.
something.
chance of
I
finding
don't know.
compared to
Just
us.
keep thinking of the guy from from Yakuza because that's what his name was before the.
Yeah, like in the beta and the prototype, like his name was like very close to Kiryu Kazuma or something. So I forgot what they changed it to because like, man, I don't know.
It's Kaede now, so.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't have him because I skipped him for Ayaka, so I had everything. And they changed how the weapon banner works, right? The weapon banner has a pity system for whales, and back then it's like you get shit out of luck if you just keep rolling the weapons banner. Now there is one fail save. If you roll 2 weapons that you don't want, the next weapon will be the one that you selected as for your pity.
And did you hit that pity?
I did, and it doesn't feel good.
So you have both Ayaka and like her weapon from that weapon banner.
Yeah, but the weapon's it looks like an electric weapon. It looks like a ka-ching weapon, or everyone fought that weapon for Bale, so everyone's like wailing for this weapon.
And
Bale is
a
Shogun.
character, right?
Bale's another name for Shogun, so.
Speaking of Ayaka, I remember very, very early like leaks of her. Does she still play like Virgil? Her moveset, her
yeah,
abilities?
she still does. Her dash
she's not
basically
Judgement
that Virgil like slash or whatever you like call it, where she's like pulling her katana out of her sheath or whatever you like to call it.
All right, and let me know when your account's ready to borrow.
I can let you use my account anytime, bro.
I don't want to get sucked back in. I'm scared.
Do you have the other 2 new characters yet? Or I think there's 2.
They're not out yet.
Oh, I see. Are they coming in with the other parts of the set of islands?
Skipping Yoimiya. She's voiced by Kana Ueda. That's known for Rin in the Fate series. So maybe Josh will go back for that.
And it's not fair. They have Hayami and Ueda back to back. That's unfair, bro. That's unfair.
Right, I need to back up a bit for someone who's ignorant like me. When there is a new character introduced in Genshin Impact that you can have the chance to get and try to roll for, are they introduced as part of the story and then you have the chance to get them, or is it the other way around? Where once you get them, they're introduced into the story.
Like if there's a new character, they'll have a little thing on the top that lets you try the character, and there are also story events to introduce the character. So there's 2 ways to do it. Sometimes the story doesn't come in immediately, so they only let you try the character first before you know the character. But this time we get the luxury of both.
But Ayaka, it seems like you were suggesting that people knew about her beforehand, like she had been involved in the story leading up to this.
No, nobody knows. It's
okay.
Like
she was just a flash in the pan, and everyone was hyped about her.
It was leaks.
Really
like people kept leaking all this stuff before it came out.
So that's what it was. When you people were like really excited going into it, I thought it was like because she had like a big part in the previous story, but no, it was leaks. All right.
There's also a trailer that released like by the launch of the game that teased like upcoming story arcs way down the road. So like this is one of the earliest looks at Ayaka 2 was in that trailer of like, they're teasing that this new region is coming, and then after that you have a very, very small glimpse of like other characters that are coming way down the road and other new story arcs. So it's kind of that carrot at the end of the hook, like, keep on going. You want to see this character, keep on going. For people who want to revisit Liyue and Mondstadt after they visit Inazuma, how would they get back? Do they have to go on a boat or something, and it'll bring it back to the previous region?
Instant teleport, man. This game has.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot.
Fast travel.
That. Yeah, but that's the only way back. I'll just fast travel. That's it.
That's what I do. I'm not sure there's a boat to take me back, but I just fast travel. Okay. But I think if you missed
the ice platform.
But I think if you missed the chance, I think you just talk to the port guy in Liyue to just get back.
All right.
Do we have any sort of timetable when they're going to expand on where you can access in Inazuma?
I think 2.1, and in 2.1 there's also the crossover with PlayStation. We get
Aloy from, that was also
Horizon Zero Dawn.
And it's interesting because this was also a new story that came out later in the week. Where, there's a crossover event where Aloy from the Horizon series is now going to be a character in Genshin, where you can exclusively obtain her on either PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. But due to the cross-play, cross-save functionality, you can use her on any system once you have her. And then she comes with a 4-star bow. I think it's 4-star as well.
I think this is a timed exclusivity for the PlayStation platforms. I think so. Like a month later, she can be obtained on any platform, just not on
Oh,
PlayStation.
I see. Yeah.
So that's pretty fair.
Well, she is on PC now, so like,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. So that's a
Is
pretty
it
fair
is
way to
is
go
this the
about it.
first like crossover of its kind for this game? Like, are there any other characters in this game that aren't from either Genshin or Honkai Impact?
No, this is the first one.
This is the first one. Interesting. It kind of opens the door though. Like,
Yeah.
first of all, like,
Kratos.
That's
I don't mind they added was it the near 2B and A2? I mean, in every gotcha game, they always got to be in every single
yeah, it feels like
you
that's
know?
kind of a safe pick. Where Aloy seems a little bit, in some ways, kind of like a out of left field pick.
It is for sure. I think it's a very interesting first collab character, like outside of like the MiHoYo verse, so the discounting Honkai. Like this is for the target audience of Genshin, they're really targeting like the JRPG audience, targeting the people who really like the anime aesthetic, and then Aloy comes from that other side of like she comes from a Western game. That the Horizon series is obviously not an anime game, so trying to try to entice those players who are interested in those games, like, hey, you can go play your favorite character, like Sony character in this game now. Like it's a really really interesting collab decision.
Not only that, but the fact that going the other direction, it's not like Aloy has been jumping into a bunch of other collabs. Like this is
Right.
as far as I remember, it's the first one she's really been into.
yeah,
So
She's been in Fortnite as well.
Aloy from Fortnite, dude.
Yeah.
well, Fortnite has everything though. Like
Yeah.
what does Fortnite not have?
A
Thank you for
Genshin
pointing that
character.
out.
Yeah, anime characters
That-
actually.
Yeah. When is Ayaka going to Fortnite?
Naruto.
All right, I'm playing Fortnite then if Ayaka's coming in there. Don't hold me to that though. I didn't say that.
Now it's
Wasn't
gonna
there an
happen.
Aloy? I don't think it was the character, but couldn't you get her like armor and stuff in Monster Hunter World?
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
right.
wow.
I
Aloy's
didn't
been
play-
in a
I-
lot.
Or could you actually
I-
play as Aloy? Oh,
I don't
actually,
remember.
Googled it,
I
apparently
didn't play
you
the
could.
PS. Oh, okay, never mind.
So
I played the PC version where I guess technically, like I said earlier, she's on PC now, so they should put that on there, but whatever.
What happens when Genshin comes to Switch, man? What happens to Aloy?
Oh, they get Link, I guess, or Zelda.
Will
Imagine.
they, will they
double check on
allow?
that?
I have no clue.
I think they only mentioned the Switch version officially once on the Genshin Impact Twitter, and like that was in early 2020, so before the game released, and never again. Let me just double check that. Like, have
I
they
remember.
mentioned it since?
I remember the last time they talked about it. I don't know if how many months ago it was, but they said they're still working, but they're just having difficulty like having it run on
Okay.
the hardware.
Yeah, that's what I heard from the dev.
Okay,
too.
so I did a search on the Genshin Impact Twitter for Switch, and all time there's only one tweet that mentions Switch on the Twitter, and it's from January 14th, 2020. It's just saying it's coming to Nintendo Switch in the future, and that's it.
We're still in the
So-
future. Anytime between now and the further future, it could come there.
They're waiting for that Switch
These
Pro
are-
whenever that's coming.
And I guess I should also mention, just maybe it's interesting, but like we get the press releases from MiHoYo on Genshin Impact, right? Like here's everything, like all the updates, what the game is, all the media, whatnot, and they never mention Switch. Like they always say like it's available on PlayStation, it's or whatever, and mobile phones, and like no mention of Switch ever.
I do wonder if MiHoYo, if somewhere internally MiHoYo now with the Steam Deck announced, I wonder if there's any sort of consideration of bringing Genshin Impact like the client to Steam. It's like, okay, well, if the Steam Deck takes off, I wonder if they'll consider just putting Genshin Impact on Steam.
So yeah, it's stuff like that where you think it would make it because you can obviously on the Steam Deck, it's at least ostensibly we don't have our hands on it. It's PC, you should be able to play just the native client. But if it was integrated with the Steam UI and launcher, it might just be a little bit more convenient.
Does the game launch from I don't know. I don't know much about Linux and Proton, but I wonder, can you just like launch Genshin from under the Proton client? I don't know.
We're giving James some homework.
Yeah.
I was just thinking James
Interesting.
Lancer.
I don't think James is interested in our Genshin conversation about it.
So here, so let's kind of close out with just this general idea. Let's say you're someone that's in maybe Josh's type of position where you played Genshin when it came out for a month, 2 months, 3 months. You've put it down for a while, but now with 2.0, you're excited to come back. Like, is it pretty easy to jump back in and be like where you were and able to jump right into this? Or do you have a bunch of things you have to kind of knock off a list before you ramp up into it?
I think that's one of the things with Genshin that's easy to do. It's like if you haven't played it for like a few months, you jump back to it, it's really easy to get back into it. It's just like, oh yeah, now I got more stuff to explore. Now I got more of a game than before,
So let's say Josh logs in tomorrow, and what does the game show him that says like you should talk to this person here to reach Inazuma, or now you have a new quest, or how does the game direct him to this?
Yeah, so like right now, like my current progress, if I were to go back, is I did pretty much everything in the base like patches. I didn't ever log back on. Like I did the very first event, that weird co-op event in that dome area, and that was like the last piece of content I did. I finished off the Liyue like base story.
It should be fine. If he comes back, it'll be like the first thing will be in your game. It'll be like the quest. It's like you already picked up the quest that will tell you to do this to go to
okay, so it'll just tell me right away, hey, go here.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
What if someone downloads Genshin for the first time?
Then they don't get it because you're also locked to a certain adventurer rank, right? So it's like you have to be at least, I think it's like 20 or 30 to get there. Or as a
that seems smart, so it's not just like overloaded. Like
because the content over there is
kind
also
of a clear progression of you do this area first, or at least you're introduced to this region first, and then you move on, rather than just having like overwhelmed. Where do I go?
Well, I guess it's like playing like a Final Fantasy expansion. I mean, it's like you just can't really jump to Heaven's Ward, even though you played all this stuff, right? Just have to do.
Is this taboo? You have drawn a line between Genshin Impact and Final Fantasy XIV.
No, but I'm just saying, like in general, and like all expansions, like it's Sona is there, but it won't let you access it immediately until you do certain story prerequisites or reaching certain level first, right?
I mean, speaking very generically, that is something that I wonder, like, to what degree that has to be considered when designing a platform game like this, whether it's an MMO or a MOBA or a hero shooter, where they have to know how to direct veteran players that log in, consistently, lapsed players who haven't logged in for a few months, and then new players. How do they make sure that they get the kind of the desired experience so that they don't get like swamped with system? What you should be doing, because it just has like over the course of time, it's kind of lost a lot of focus. Obviously, Genshin's been a year old, but makes me just think about how you have to consider that for the long run for these games that have such long lifespans. Any other final concluding thoughts on 2.0? Are you done with it yet, or do you have a bunch more to do?
No, I got tons and tons to go.
Well, you were the one that said that you didn't have enough to do, so
they finally threw at me, but yeah, I guess.
So at the start of this, you kind of mentioned that you were jumping between a bunch of different gacha games. So you're currently doing Genshin.
I play Grand Blue, and I play Epic 7,
right?
Yeah, Epic 7 has a collab coming too. They have a ReZero collab coming.
Everyone has a ReZero collab, dude.
Yeah, I guess a ReZero collab is easy to get. I guess it's one of those things like the creators like, I don't care what they do with my property. Just pay me, I'll take it, right?
Like Aloy and pretty much everything then.
It's going to happen, apparently. Another release that came out this week, or maybe last week, I don't remember exactly when it times out, a bit of a different tact for this one, is Cris Tales. This is a game that first was revealed at E3 2019. And I actually remember this because I got an email from the publisher, Modus Games, when we were going to visit that E3. Adam, James, and I went to that one the last year before it kind of really, truly collapsed for good, thanks to 2020 and other issues. And they were really, this is 2 years ago in 2019, they were really kind of coy about exactly what it was and, who it was for. And it ended up being kind of like this surprising thing that for the last 2 years, they've really tried to like tie how it's similar to Chrono Trigger, how it has an anime sort of aesthetic, but also inspired by Western animation, and had a bunch of the Steam Festival demos, and it had a few iterations on that demo, and it finally did launch just last week, and Adam had a chance to play it. So what is Cris Tales, and how are you feeling about it so far?
Yep, so you weren't sure when it released. It did release last week on July 20th.
The reason why I wasn't sure is because you obviously got an access for review, but it was really late and like coincided with the launch.
Yeah.
So-
So review code came out the day before. So there's
I
actually
didn't
not
remember
that
how
many.
early
There's
that
actually
hit.
like not that many reviews up online, and I think Switch version was like a few days before. So most reviews were Switch. But so Cris Tales, if you're not familiar, it's an indie game from a studio in Colombia. It's actually like a pair of studios. It's one of them is Sick. It's SYCK, and one of them is Dreams Uncorporated. And it is a classically styled like Japanese RPG inspired game. So turn-based sort of system. It had clear inspiration from Chrono Trigger, Paper Mario, those types of games. And it released on basically everything. It's like PC, Switch, current and next gen PlayStation, Xbox consoles, and even Stadia. So,
I was actually going to say like Stadia. I was going to be like cheeky,
it's on
but then you
Stadia.
actually brought
It's
it
on
up.
Game Pass as well. So Cris Tales, I played it. I finished it. I have not had a time to actually write my review yet. So this is sort of a precursor to a written formal review for it. So the game itself, it stars, the main character is named Crispell, and she, at the onset of the game, learns that she is a time mage, and she has the ability to see the past and the present at any given time, and she gains other time-bending powers as she goes through the game. You cannot actually travel to other time periods, so it's not like Chrono Trigger in that regard, but it does come into play in terms of the story, in terms of some of the mechanics in battle, and things like that. And early on in the game, her village, Narim, is attacked by an antagonist known as the Time Empress, who is basically a much more experienced time mage, only this person has nefarious purposes that you don't know what they are yet. And she basically sets out on an adventure to save these cities that are being affected by either the Time Empress or other problems. And basically, ultimately, of course, ends up needing to save the world, right? And joining with different characters along the way. It's a relatively shorter game. So I know I've seen people sort of lament that, like, why can't people make a 20-hour JRPG anymore, right? Well, Cris Tales has actually took me about 20 hours to beat, so it's kind of a brisk, brief, cozy sort of game. You mentioned that it had like an anime aesthetic. I actually got a chance to speak with the some of the developers on the game, and the aesthetic that they actually the comparison they made in terms of the art style, the most direct comparison they made is actually a Western cartoon. It's called Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Actually,
Oh, I
remember
know that
this?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at the art, you can sort of see it. You know, it's in that show kind of has like the big eyes, maybe the stylized body proportions and things like that. So you can see it. It was on like Cartoon Network like a decade ago or whatever. So that was actually like their main.
George was a wee
inspiration.
lass.
I was just
But-
gonna say.
But he actually, so like I said, the development team is Colombian, and they said that so in Colombia they get like bits and if you're growing up as a young person in Colombia, they get bits and pieces of media from the US, from Japan. So they do see like they get some anime, they get some cartoons, and they're like from other countries that inspire them. And so the creative team there wanted to sort of like make a game kind of with those inspirations and basically say like, here's something from Colombia. And so Colombia is a South American country, and a lot of the cities and architecture in Cris Tales is based on real Colombian places, and some of the storylines and some of the conflicts that appear in the game are also based on Colombian history or Colombian, just the history of the city and of real world events. It's like, for example, I know the town of St. Clarity is the first town you go to when you set off on your adventure, and it is a town that is split very, very rigidly between like the walled city area, which is the upper class area where all the richer people live, and then the lower city area is called Floodside, and it's called Floodside because literally the area is flooded, not just by natural water, but by sewage. And the city of St. Clarity in the game is actually inspired by the real world city of I might mispronounce this, Cartagena. And this appears all throughout the game, where there's various architectures like a clock tower or a wall or a canal or whatever. That's all actually based off a real world place. So in terms of the game itself, it's a turn-based RPG. And early on, you do meet a few characters that basically form your initial party. You have Crispell, who is a time mage. Then you meet Christopher, who is actually not related to Crispell in any way, just a kind of a coincidental similar name, is a elemental mage, and he attacks with sort of like this shield sword thing. And then you meet Wilhelm, who is also a time mage in a way, but his magic is more like nature-based, so he can like plant magic seeds, and then time can be manipulated where they grow into various effects, like a poison effect or an explosive effect and things like that. So in battle, so have you ever played a classic style JRPG where you kind of get like a pincer attack where you have enemies on both sides of you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Every battle in Cris Tales actually looks like that, but it's not really a pincer attack. That's just the standard battle formation where your party's in the center and there's enemies on both sides of you. And how the game works is that Crispell, for enemies on the left-hand side of the screen, she can send them back into the past. And enemies on the right-hand side of the screen, she can send them into the future. And that can have various effects in terms of what it does to the enemies. Like, for example, wolves are a type of enemy in the game. If you send a wolf into a future, they become like a alpha wolf or whatever, and they become stronger. They become more higher attack power, higher defense power, more HP, things like that. So you
get
don't
more
really
experience out of them?
I don't think so. I think experience actually doesn't matter what state they're in when you beat them. But like, for example, goblins, if you send goblins into the future, they become more squishy, like weaker, less HP, but they have like magic now. So there are some cases where if you meet a certain enemy, you want to send them either into the past or into the future, and they're easier to deal with. And you kind of have to know just by experience what the best way to approach a certain enemy is. So, and since you can only send enemies on the left to the past and enemies on the right to the future, there's kind of both a positioning element, like spatially, and a positioning element temporally, right? So both time and space here, because, for example, Christopher, the elemental mage, actually does get abilities where he can kind of fling enemies from one side of the screen to the other. So you kind of have to consider both.
So you might want to like fling. I'm going on a conjecture based on how you've described it. Like, you might want to use Christopher to fling a wolf from the right side of the screen to the left, so that they can't become an alpha wolf. And then can you turn them into like a cub if you send them to the past?
Right, exactly. And then they become
I like that in principle.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, that's how basically the battle systems in the game work. It's pure turn-based, so no ATB or anything like that. You know, if it's Crispell's turn, she gets to act. There's a timeline on the top. There are also Paper Mario type elements in terms of button pressing at times, where when you do an attack, if you press, the A button or the appropriate action button during the attack, you can do a critical hit. And when you are attacked, if you defend at the right time, you can parry if you defend it properly. So it's got that sort of system as well. These time mechanics also come into play with boss fights, and certain boss fights kind of play around with the mechanic in different ways. For example, early on in the game, you go through the St. Clarity sewers, and in the sewers, you fight like a sewer monster, right? And so when you're fighting the sewer monster, he starts on the right-hand side of the screen and then will kind of randomly move from the left to the right at different points during the battle. So at certain points in the battle, you can send them into the future, and at certain points you can send them in the past. So like, just one kind of obvious strategy that pops up here is you can, if he's on the left-hand side of the screen, you can poison him, right? And then he moves to the right-hand side of the screen. He's moving in time in addition to space. And because a bunch of time has passed from moving from the left to the right, all that poison damage accumulates, and he takes a big hit of damage.
That's
so
nice.
That's
stuff like that. So that's basically the gimmick in this game in terms of how is it different from a classic RPG, and that's how it's different is this time mechanic in battle. There's no, as far as I know, there's no other game that does anything really like that.
So does the game make good use of it? Does it stay interesting throughout?
That's actually it does wane a bit. Later on in the game, I feel like that time mechanic becomes less useful because my characters become strong enough where I don't really need to worry about it so much. Like, oh, here's an enemy. I don't really need to worry about what time they're in. Just use your strong magic or your strong physical attack and beat them like a normal game, right? So it does wane a bit where it's like the interest gets it's almost not worth worrying about, where just do your high attack skills or high damage skills and you'll be fine. But it's still a pretty cool concept, and I think it's interesting enough. I wish it kind of stayed more interesting and stayed more relevant and useful further into the game than it does. So it's a little bit disappointing in that regard. Any questions about anything I've said so far?
Well, not a
Anything you're
question,
curious
but
about?
one thing that you said early on that this actually reminded me of, and this might not be totally related, but it's still what popped in my head. But another game that came out that was a studio, also South American or maybe Central American, that was them trying to deliver something from their country based on the inspiration that they had played, was Bug Fables. That was a studio from Panama who basically said, like, we had played Paper Mario and we want to create something in the same space, and here it is. And this is based on, what it's not, obviously that's a game where it's a little bit more fictionalized, but it's still the same idea where it's like they get to experience American or European games and cartoons, and they just kind of take what they've experienced growing up and they want to deliver onto the world stage themselves. And that's also a game on Game Pass. And you also see, like, this isn't quite as much an RPG, but I do know a game that recently came on Game Pass was Raji and Ancient Epic, which is an Indian game based on, I think, inspired by like Prince of Persia. So it's just, I've mentioned this on a few past podcasts, but it's just really cool. Like, I don't know if I've played I can't name another Colombian video game off the top of my head, but I can name Cris Tales. And it seems like I've seen enough, not hype, that's maybe wording it too vaguely, but I've seen enough like interest in it because it's doing something different. It's got that unique art style where it's not clearly aping one specific thing where it's like, oh, they're just emulating Persona or something. But no, it's like they're incorporating Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends of all things. Like, that is inspired, I think, in some ways. So that was just my comment. Just, it's really cool just to see something like it's got some real originality to it. That's my off the cuff take.
Okay, so I've described the premise and the battle system. As for some like actual opinions on the game, it is a bit rough around the edges. You kind of have to, going into it, be cognizant of the fact that it is from a small indie team in Colombia. It is a little bit like uneven in places, unbalanced in places, and there's a couple of things you sort of take for granted in an RPG that this game doesn't really do either well or at all. Just as one small example that it kind of stuck out to me, even though it might sound petty, it has random battles like a classic turn-based RPG, right? Now, there is no transition into the random battle. So you're literally walking across a field area, right? And then just suddenly a load screen appears, and then you're in battle. And it's just like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, they're not even like, normally there's some sort of shattering of the screen or like a swirl or something.
Vortex, my favorite.
Yeah, it's like it's nitpicky, right? But it's just kind of like, oh, that's kind of weird. It's just loading. You're wandering, and then just like it is sudden loading screen. Also, I should also mention,
would it just like immediately pop into battle?
So I'm playing it on PC. I should also mention, this is getting off topic a bit, ruining my flow, but the PC version, again, indie team, it has pretty much no configuration options whatsoever. You just load it and it plays. I'm playing on a 4K monitor, and it is in 4K, like rendering and whatnot. I mean, it's 2D, so it's not like 3D renders or whatever. It's mostly 2D. But the PC version for me runs pretty well, but I have seen other people have some issues with it, and there's just like no configuration options. It's just sound. Like, you can affect like voice language or voice options, sound effect, music, whatever. So And there's also no keyboard mouse control, so it has to be.
I know you misspoke, but like when you say voice language, is English
sorry,
only
it's in English. I meant voice volume, but
no,
yeah,
I know you mentioned that just accidentally, but I was just curious. Like, is it just English?
Just
It'd
English.
be cool if it was like
So,
I don't know what language. I'll be honest. I'm ignorant here.
It's Spanish.
It's Spanish, but not an option here. All right.
Mm-hmm. I have seen and heard that the console versions of this game are also kind of rough in terms of loading times, stuttering. Load times especially seem to be a big problem, and especially like going into and out of battle, how frequent that might be. We have to wait 10 seconds or whatever. I heard it's especially bad on Switch, so it's one of those things where it's like maybe wait for a patch. I was lucky with the PC version, but since there is no configuration, you kind of just have to, does it work or not? I suppose you can try out the demo and see how it works, so that's probably representative. But in terms of other like indie performance, rough around the edges things, there are times where the presentation's a little bit weird, where there are a handful of sort of like 2D animated scenes. They're not like anime studio type cutscenes or whatever, but stylized like animations, because this is an animation studio also in Colombia that helped out on this. Those are pretty nice, but there are some scenes that are through just the dialogue boxes in the game. And let me see if I can explain this in a way that makes sense. So you're running in a city area, and you got like the city music playing in the background. It's usually like a lighthearted, fun little city theme. It's nothing, it's cool enough. And then a dramatic event starts happening where a villain shows up or whatever, and there's a serious conversation going on. But it's through like the normal dialogue boxes, and the city music is still just playing in the background. It's still like lighthearted, happy, jolly city music, but there's this big dramatic event happening. And normally I would expect it to be, maybe the music mutes it a bit, or there's like a different music track that pops in that like sort of indicates like this is important, this is a serious event, this is dramatic, but it doesn't. And it kind of threw me off in a way, like when you normally have like a conversation in a game and it's just like the traditional music in the background, it's just like a casual NPC conversation or whatever, but it's just like a little bit weird in terms of, I guess this is an indie game, it doesn't have all of the budget and time to be able to incorporate these things, but you kind of have to keep those in mind. But also, some of the dialogue is a little bit terse, and I don't know if I can explain this very well, but characters will be talking about one topic, and then because they have to, and to suit the narrative, they like shift gears really readily to like a more important topic, like in the middle of a sentence, like on a dime. So it flows a little bit weirdly at times. So there are things like that just kind of pop up here and there.
You give like an example where it's like, I'm sorry you feel that way, Chris Bell, but we have to do this or something.
Yeah, I don't have an example off the top of my head. Maybe I should look up one for the review that I'll write. But yeah, they'll just be talking with an NPC about, what they're doing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, this is like the home of the villain or something. And we have to, make sure they can't do this thing or whatever. And it's just like, oh, that's kind of weird. It just flows really weirdly at times.
I remember sorry to cut you off, but I remember when people were talking about this game when it was first unveiled, like their UI for battle was very evocative of Persona 5, which, like they had that whole slanted letters forming up against the circular center and whatnot. Has that changed, or has that been tweaked to like move away from that? Because I remember when I saw it, like it was like, of course it evoked that, but at the same time like the readability of it was kind of very stiff, and it was like, I don't know.
They changed the font. It was this weird, like stylized, it was almost like a graffiti-ish font, but they changed it. It's more basic perhaps, but it's more legible.
Okay,
but it still has. So in battle, like I said, pincer attack, enemies left and right. You either press left or right to let it know which direction you're attacking in, and from there you can pick like skills or healing or whatever. Then you can also press up or down. Up gives you your options to pass your turn or to defend or to use an item, or down is flee. So there's a little bit of that, cardinal direction, pressing a button thing in the battle. But otherwise, they did change the font from its original like graffiti style or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it looks like the original font almost looks like one of those like ransom letters where you cut out the letters from like a magazine. and then the new
Yeah.
one's just like some Terra
I
font.
like it. The old one, I mean. Sorry.
Also, in terms of unevenness, some of the balance in the game is a little bit weird. Like in terms of mechanical polishing. Early on, for instance, and Brian was actually watching me stream this part. In the first dungeon in the game, for example, you don't have any healing options yet, and the game gives you 2 potions, and that's it. You can't have Botan anymore at this point in the game. And I was actually like, okay, I've used my 2 potions, but now my guys are getting kind of weak, and I literally cannot heal. Like this is kind of weird. Why don't I have like any option to heal? I can't even buy items, and people don't even use items in RPGs, right? They hoard them all. And eventually, like once you reach level 5, you get a healing spell, and it's like, oh, okay, that's finally. So it was a little bit rough going for a bit at the beginning there, until you get a healing spell. And then in other parts of the game, like in terms of how much money you get from battles, it doesn't seem like it's enough. And then in the next zone, you get a ton. And then in the next zone, you don't get as much in terms of like the economy of the game. So it seems a little bit weird in terms of how things progress in terms of, RPG increasing numbers, increasing prices.
Like that might just be, experience with
Right.
resource management of developing this sort of game. So,
and just kind of broadly speaking, that's one of those things that I don't know exactly how developers like test that in terms of how much experience should enemies give at this point, how much money should they give. They have to, I guess, estimate how many battles is somebody going to get into on average in this zone, and how much money are they roughly going to have, and how much experience are they going to gain, how many levels should they have, and what should the stats of enemies be.
Also, like, should we expect the player to be able to buy out all the new equipment at the shops or whatever the equivalent is, or
Right.
are we gonna specifically try to limit so that they have to pick and choose? There's
Fire
a
up cheat
philosophy,
engine, and then you can go bypass everything.
there's just a philosophy idea there too, where it's like, do we want to make it so that they can earn enough money to buy everything, or are we going to deliberately price things where there's more decision making involved? I'm speaking generally. I mean,
All right, so there's one more major element of the game I haven't talked on yet, and that is the overall like flow and structure of progressing through the game. So the game is basically separated into cities. You start out in a starter city called Narim, and that's your prologue, and then you move in sequence to the city of St. Clarity, then the city of Neva Tulira, then the city of Cinder. And each of these cities is basically a compartmentalized, isolated story, events, and you kind of move at them in sequence. And it's effectively like your chapters in the game. And in each city, you get a series of side quests that appear. So these are optional, of course. Like for example, in the first city, you meet an inventor named Audrey, and she's trying to create devices with like machines and mechanical devices. And you can help her out by finding blueprints. And your time powers do come into this as well in various ways, in terms of this is more like an adventure game sort of style here, where, for example, she wants you to grab blueprints from a person's shop. And then you go to that person and he says like, okay, I have these blueprints, but they're pretty old and they've been damaged over the years. But you're a time mage, so that doesn't matter, right? You just go into the past, grab the blueprints on the past when they're freshly inked, then back to the present, then you can give them back, and so on and so forth. That's the first quest. So it gets a little bit more involved than that. And by completing these side quests in each city, you are basically making the populace happy. You're helping more people and whatnot. And at the end of each of these cities' events, like their storylines, you at the end of St. Clarity, at the end of Neva Tulira, and at the end of the Cinder events, there's always something that happens where Crispell has to make a choice. Do I do this or this? Do I do A or B? However, if you complete all these subquests in each area, you get a third choice, and it is always the optimal choice. So unfortunately, in a way, it does make sort of the decision making easy. It's just like, oh, if you want to make the best choice, just do the sub events and make the best choice. You don't actually have to think about it, like which is
Yeah.
it's not like some maybe more thoughtful Western RPGs where like you actually have to weigh your morals or what
there's real trade-offs, right?
Yeah. So, I don't mind it too much. Smaller scale game from an indie developer. I'm not expecting big choice and consequence. It's a comfy, cozy type of nostalgic feeling game. So it's just kind of nice to know like that's your reward for doing the sub quest is that you can pick an optimal outcome for each of these storylines that appear. And if you pick all three optimal outcomes, that does lead to the game's best ending after that. So that's the overall structure of the game. And like I said, I beat it in about 20 hours. So it's not, for an RPG, that's not very long at all. So you can beat it within a week pretty readily, I think. And I have some reservations in terms of, you know, the storyline, the characters, some of the polish, the mechanics. Doesn't stay as interesting as I would have liked. I'm probably going to score it a 7 out of 10. We'll see. So it's an okay game. It's fine. I think you kind of just have to go into it with the right expectations, I think, to enjoy it. But yeah, that's Cris Tales.
No,
if you're one of those people
was
have been wondering, like, where are the 20-hour RPGs? Well, here's one to try out. It's on Game Pass if you have that option.
And hopefully they fix out any of the bugs that version or the Xbox version has. Also released this week, did you know a new Pokemon game came out? I actually did not know about this until several people in RPG site staff Discord started talking about it. I did not know this existed. I don't know like what rock I've been living under, but I am talking about Pokemon Unite.
And this week.
Yeah, so what in the world, Josh, is Pokemon Unite?
Oh boy, what is Pokemon Unite? It's a Pokemon MOBA, and for people who don't know what MOBA is, I think the commonly accepted whatever. It's like multiplayer online battle arena. I think that's what it stands for. It's similar to a Dota or a League of Legends or Heroes of New Earth or Heroes of the Storm.
Might. So we get a Pokemon MOBA before a Pokemon hero shooter and before a Pokemon battle royale.
Yeah, it's a very weird concept. So this is developed by a subsidiary of Tencent Games called Timmy Studio Group, and then alongside with the Pokemon Company as well. And you know the primary target from the get-go with this game was the Chinese market. And whatnot. So this came out after like years of like beta testing, alpha testing, and whatnot. This finally came out. I forgot when it was first unveiled to the public. There was murmurs of this before it was officially unveiled, and I forgot when it was actually initially announced.
2019 maybe?
Was it?
2020?
I believe it. Yeah, it's been a while. So this is
was this one of those games? I think like Pokemon Twitter teased it, and then they announced it. And that almost was a bad idea because whenever Pokemon Twitter teases something, people are expecting like something.
Here's the MMO.
Yeah, here's like the next big 3D open world MMORPG, right? And it's like, here's the MOBA. It's just not what people expected, so they didn't even give it a chance.
Yeah, it's had a rough marketing cycle because obviously this is not really what core Pokemon fans want. But for people like me who hasn't really played a Pokemon game in a really long time, I picked up Pokemon Quest for like a few. I want to say like an hour, maybe at most. It was like that cube game. It was weird. Yeah. So in the same vein, this is up to 5v5. Real people can go head to head against each other, and like a Dota or a League of Legends, you all start in this home base, and then it's split into two lanes. Top lane, the bottom lane, and then in the middle is sort of like a jungle area. And like those games, every new match, everyone starts at level 1, and then they beat up these neutral monsters. So either the any side can beat these up. These neutral creeps. Yeah, that's what they call them. That's the terminology.
Oh,
yeah. That's the MOBA technology. The creeps. That's
stick with me. I didn't know that.
That's like the neutral monsters that you beat up in Dota and League and all those other MOBAs. That's the common universal term for those.
Right. Okay. So just not to interrupt, but as that probably just made evident, this is my first MOBA, so I haven't a clue what that means. I thought Josh was being like, Yeah,
No,
that's weirder.
no, I just for some background, I played Dota. Like I've long quit Dota, but I played Dota for at least 200 hours before I quit. I played Heroes of New Earth for a good amount of time as well.
I see the two viewpoints then, newbie and
Yeah,
veteran.
I also played Heroes of the Storm. I never touched League. But yeah, I played a somewhat a fair amount of MOBA. People will say, that's no amount of hours. It's like, yeah, it's probably fair. So I was going through this. I was like, okay, I'm done with MOBAs. And then my some close friends of mine were trying it out for jokes, and then they're like, this can't be good. And then all of a sudden, as the day went on, it's like, I think this is actually good, guys. Like, what? So everyone, as more and more people started checking it out, we all got hooked. And like, fuck, this game is fun as shit. So as you're beating up these creeps and leveling up and making sure that the enemy doesn't get close to you, you would learn abilities as you level up. So let's say I have Pikachu, and his two starting abilities is Thunderbolt and Electronet. And Thunderbolt is a basic zap attack directly if they step into your zone. And then an Electronet is you spit a net of electricity at them that renders them immobile for like a second or two. And then as you level up, say to level 4, you can evolve this. Was it the Electronet move? Either into an electric ball or another ability that's like a thunder ability of some sort, and then it'll transform that move. So you no longer have Electronet, but like I prefer choosing Electro Ball. So I now fling a huge shock ball of electricity at opponents, and that does AOE damage. So it transforms that ability as you level up, and then the same thing with my Thunderbolt ability. Eventually, at a certain level, I can choose between this ability that stuns them, like an AOE stun, or another ability that I don't really use. I think it's like a tackle or a volt tackle or some sort, where you kind of rush them down and interrupt their ability if they're casting one. And then so as you level up, obviously you're making these decisions about what kind of ability moveset you want, along with like in other MOBAs at level 7 or level 8, you'll get your ult ability that'll charge up, and then once you do that, it'll unleash an ultimate attack that'll has a long cooldown. So for Pikachu, that's, hey, I'll summon a crap load of like a thunder zone around me, and anyone who steps into the zone gets zapped by really powerful lightning and whatnot.
So with the various Pokemon, so it's like a team-based game, right?
Yeah.
Do different Pokemon have different, like a football team, like they have different roles, they do different things?
Mm-hmm. So you have your
MOBA is like a football game, apparently.
It really is. Like these type of games all have like strict roles. So you'll have your
just maybe do maybe you can make the argument it's like chess or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so like you like in this one, like Eldegoss or whatever it's called, is like your support role. Yeah, it has a lot of healing abilities and making sure that everyone's good to go for the upcoming fight. They're not like the biggest damaging Pokemon or whatever. They're a strictly support role that also has to get levels as well and get their own moveset. And as you're defeating creeps and other players, even by just sticking by a person or like getting at least one hit on them, you'll get like some of the experience. But anyone who gets the last hit on like a player or a creep, they'll get more experience because they got the last hit on them and whatnot. So that's that's a common mechanic in other MOBA games. So every Pokemon is different. This doesn't have like the whole roster. There's like maybe 20 or so Pokemon, and as you were saying, there's the different types. There's like an attack role, a defender role, and a support role. And certain Pokemon have their evolutions represented in this game. So Venusaur, for example, when you start out the game, it's a Bulbasaur. Then as you level up and you get like your first like move, it'll evolve to an Ivysaur. And then once you get your ult, it'll evolve to a Venusaur. And
I was actually going to ask, like, if evolutions were actually part of the game, because I haven't seen anything about this. I know people are playing it, but I haven't really paid attention because I've played MOBAs in the past. I've enjoyed them, but and this is going to be really, really weird. But the only MOBA I've ever actually really gelled with was Paragon.
Nice. It's definitely not for everyone, but it is easily the most accessible types of these games that have been released to the market to this date. It helps because it doesn't control like shit on the Switch controller. Yeah, all the movement is done via the control stick, not through a mouse, like you're pathing your character. And the way you switch or get new abilities, it's all done by the triggers. So your abilities are your R and ZR button, and then how you choose them when they first pop up is like just that same button and whatnot. So and then like auto attacking is done by holding A down and it'll attack the closest target. But then there's like an advanced control option in the main menu or in the options menu if you want, where you can either prioritize a player or a creep if they're in the attack zone. So you can like prioritize hitting them or hitting the creep in that when you're doing your auto attack and whatnot. So there's a good amount of depth into it, but not so much. And the reason why I like this game is because unlike most other similar games on the market that can easily take 20 to 50-minute matches, and it's like, oh man, it's such a big time commitment for every match. The max amount of time any match in this game can ever last for is 10 minutes. That's it. And that's just the standard 5v5 mode. After a certain player rank, you can unlock a quick match mode that has a 3v3 and 4v4 option, and those are a strict 5 minutes as well.
That's nice. You can just load up the game and like, I have an hour to spare. I can get a handful of matches in.
Yeah, it really does help. So even like if you're losing by a big amount and your team doesn't want to surrender, your teammates don't want to surrender, at least the pain is not all that long. Because if you try to quit out of a match as your in game, it'll obviously penalize you. Like, hey, don't disconnect during the match. So it has all those sorts of penalties and whatnot. So the main thing that really distinguishes this from other games of this nature, besides the hard like short time limit, is the objective as well. And the other games like Dota and Heroes of New Earth, you have this structure at the enemy base that like if the enemy doesn't surrender, obviously by that point, you have to go push onto their base and destroy the structure that they're all trying to defend and whatnot. And that process in itself could take a while, depending on how the flow of the match goes. In this one, it's a score attack where every creep that you kill, every enemy that you kill, and then they drop like these energy orbs, and then as you're collecting these orbs, you get these energy points, and the goal of this is to get into an enemy platform and other MOBAs like Dota, where like there are these towers that would usually attack you. These tower-like structures they don't attack you, but if the enemy team like stays in them, they'll regenerate health while staying in them, while you get slowed down. So you're trying to dunk these energy points that you accrued by kills into these tower structures, and whoever has the most points by the end of that 5 to 10 minute timer wins. And
so not only do you have to like earn the points, you actually have to deposit them to actually have them count.
Yeah.
So I know I was watching you stream it where you might have 30 points or whatever. I don't know if that's a lot or not.
That's pretty about. Yep.
And then you might be trying to make your way to one of these enemy hoops or whatever you want to call it, but if they defend it well and get you, then it's kind of you just wasted those points.
Yeah, so every time you die, like say I have 30 points, it'll take like a little over 50% of those points and like just drop them for the enemy team to pick up. Sometimes we'll take all your points and whatnot if you had like a low amount of points. So there is some penalty to death because now they could potentially like score with the points that they stole from you.
I don't know if this is a good comparison or not because I haven't really played a MOBA, but it sort of reminds me of like a more involved version of capture the flag, where you can grab the flag, but it doesn't mean anything until you get it back to where it needs to go. Although I know it's not quite the same as that in terms of where you're actually going with it, but like you have to get the points and then deposit them. So
it's also really funny too, because it's like such a lighthearted game on the surface. It really is, because of like it has iconic Pokemon animations. So you'll have Snorlax as a playable character, and one of the ability Snorlax has is it can just like sleep. It can just do rest. So it'll just like lay on the ground for like a few seconds, recovering a lot of its health, just like in battle. So sometimes I'll be like in top lane, you'll see these two Snorlaxes waddle against each other, try to like slap each other, trying to fight for control.
I was actually watching you stream it and having like these two Snorlaxes, one on each team, right, face off. And it was kind of funny because they have an ability to just sleep and heal, and they were like fighting, and then like they both fall asleep to heal, and then they fight.
This reminds me of that really early anime episode where it's two Metapods. I want to see Metapods added to Pokemon Unite.
And it's really cool whenever you dunk these points in. It's actually like a basketball dunk on that tower. So it's like have like Pikachu like hold this energy ball and just like do a slam dunk to deposit its points.
I remember seeing the key arts where Pikachu is like dunking a ball. I'm like, what is this? Like a basketball spin-off? No,
like if it's like Bulbasaur, it'll actually use its vine whips to dunk that as well. So it's really funny. I've been having a blast with it. Some of the more finer key mechanics to it, besides just being a score attack, is these initial towers that the enemy has. They can both break down because they both have like an initial HP pool of like 100. So once 100 points or more are deposited into it, it'll keep on going until there's a central tower structure right in front of their base that has no HP pool, so you can continually dunk into there without having to worry that it'll break down. You have to push further because that's the last structure. At the 2-minute mark in a standard game, or 2 to 3 minutes, I think it's a 2-minute mark, a Zapdos will appear at the center of the playing field, and this kind of like the key comeback mechanics. So if you're losing badly, if you can secure Zapdos, there's a good chance that you might actually be able to swing it around at the final stretch, because killing Zapdos not only gives all of your teammates an additional 20 points to whatever points that they have, but it leaves all your enemy towers defenseless in a defenseless state. And what that means is they can't use it to heal. No, they can't just sit in those towers to heal anymore. And the amount of time it takes to deposit energy points is severely reduced, almost instantaneously. And whatever you deposit into them will double. So if you have like 50 points on you, you can cash it in for 100 points, and that's a big swing in the grand scheme of things. And then
now,
go for it.
Sorry. So the Zapdos is like this optional boss target, like neutral target that either team can take on for this bonus effect. I don't think you mentioned this. There's only one at least for the 5-on-5 matches. There's only one battlefield at the moment, so it's always the same. It's always a Zapdos.
At the moment, there's only one. There's one map for the 5v5 and a more condensed version of that in the 4v4. In the 3v3, there's actually a different map in it to accommodate a way smaller player base in that match. So the way that the 3v3 works is has like rotating like platforms that only move one way, and there's a different boss in it, but I don't think it has the same effect in that. I haven't really messed with 3v3 too much. I forgot what the boss is called. It's like a big robot like Pokemon, and there's only two tower like structures in it that have infinite health, so it's kind of like a free for all almost in that condensed version. But other than that, you are correct that there's only one main stage at the moment at the launch date of this game. So I imagine as this game continues to go on, they'll add more and more. So that's the swing mechanic with Zapdos. There are other mechanics that are kind of lesser bosses of Zapdos, where there's like a Rotom and a Dreadmaw. And with a Rotom that will spawn at the very top end of the screen, if you beat it for your team, like you get the last hit on it, it'll join your side and push that lane with you. and if it makes contact with an enemy base during its march, it'll render the particular tower defenseless, so you can cash in points more readily that way. And then with the Dreadmaw at the bottom, if you kill that, it'll give all your teammates an energy regen and a shield with them for a limited amount of time. Another mechanic with it is the jungle area, where in other MOBAs they have a very similar thing where there are creeps special creeps in there where you can use to like farm more speedily. So there are definitely characters like Zora Aura or Cinderace or what was the other one? Absol.
I don't know these Pokemon.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to remember them because I don't like from the game, not necessarily from the Pokemon games. So those are kind of like the jungler type characters where they will extend their late bloomers. They will excel, but they really need the levels very fast to get there. So they use this jungle area on their own to get there. Usually the standard structure of a team, and certain types of these jungle enemies will also give you special abilities if you kill them, and they'll give you special buffs for a limited amount of time. So one of them might give you this like purple aura where all your basic attacks slows an enemy down, which could be very, very useful. So that's kind of the basic flow of the game. It's very fun. Outside of the game, of course, there's a free to play game. So I haven't spent a cent on it yet, but there are all sorts of currencies that you might imagine to go stylize your trainer character with like swag and whatnot, and have a special shirt, get some good socks on you. And you won't ever really see these in the heat of battle, but you gotta look the part to play the part. Know what I'm saying?
You can customize your avatar's socks, but you can't take off their shoes. Just for anyone that needs to know this piece of information.
Yeah, Brian specifically asked me, "Can you take off their shoes?" I'm like,
well, just like if you have fancy socks, you can't appreciate them because you have to look at what if you have basic ass shoes, but you've spent a lot of money on these really dope socks, and you can only see like the ankle. Like, what's the fun in that? See?
That's all right. Fair point. And then you can also have some Pokemon have special summer skins at the moment. So my Venusaur, since I logged in for 3 or 4 days in a row, he has a summer set, and my Venusaur has like goggles now with a big ass Hawaiian shirt, ready to go, having the time of his life. Some Pokemon like Talonflame has a super special skin that I assume you can like roll from like the in-game gacha or whatever, but like the in-game gacha isn't actually like you don't spend like real money on it, I don't think. So if you hover over this special Talonflame skin, it has like a whole big cinematic on it to introduce it as it's flying like a jet engine and whatnot. I'm like, all right, Talonflame, privileged, but it looks nice. But I think the real concern about it, because a lot of the prevailing conversation about this game that people are understandably worried about as the game progresses, is there's an element of you can kind of pay your way to get more powerful faster, because it adopts the League of Legends rune system in a way where you can equip your Pokemon with held items. So I can equip like any of my Pokemon with these 3 held items. Could be like an apple, which will give HP plus 16, and then another item will give attack plus 1, and then another one which may give like movement speed for like I don't know about the other one. I forgot what it was, but it was like, let's say movement speed plus 1 and whatnot. You can actually level these items up with item enhancers. So up to like level 20. So they all start at level 1, and then say I feed my attack plus item like with item enhancers for to level 10. It'll have like maybe attack plus 10 or something, and then these are permanent buffs to them. They're persistent throughout every game. They're not like something that you consume. There's like items that you equip. So people are really worried. Like you can get these item enhancers as you play the game, like as you're completing like in-game missions and achievements or not. So there's like a free way to like buff these items, and it'll just take a while people can just purchase currency to buy item enhancers to level them up faster. So that's the one big worry for people at the moment. Like, how will this game progress, especially, if you want to deal more damage and whatnot. And it for some characters, like, it doesn't really matter because, like, Zoro or Gengar, for example, like they're specialists, they're melee specialists that like kill you so fast. Like, it doesn't really matter if you have like held items with them or not, I'd say. And then but there are counters to them, like, say like with Gengar, you have to like manually target his stuff. You have to be pretty precise with Gengar to do a lot of damage with him very fast. With Zoro Aura, if you see a Zoro Aura coming, you can like either rely on your team or stay in a safe spot, because Zoro Aura can't really do much if you stun it, like, or do a lot of just things to interrupt his abilities.
So in certain circumstances, your specific stats or hold items fall well short of just skill and technique. But in some other cases, it might actually turn the tide. So it's like, I don't maybe not pay to win, but pay to have the best possible chance.
Yeah, it's it's basically pay to progress these items faster. But I think right now at the state of the game, it's so early on who can really say. And at the moment, team synergy and like is key. This is a very teamwork type game. Like, no matter if like the enemy team has like a lot of like maybe powerful items, if they're disorganized or just not like doing smart plays, then obviously they're going to lose, because this is something that you're playing for an objective. You're playing to have the highest score, not to have the most skills. You know what I'm saying? I've spoken on for so long about this game. George, I know you're playing this game. This is kind of like your first MOBA. Tell me about what you've been up to with this game.
So it was really just played on a whim. It was just like, oh, this is free, give it a go. So I started playing with Nintendo Insider's Alex Seedhouse, and I literally intended just an hour just to check it out after like some positive buzz, and then we ended up playing for, I think, 3 hours, and then earlier today I played like half an hour on my own, just jump back in. It's just very like cozy. I don't know if I'd ever go into it like competitively, or if I'd even like bother with ranked.
I wouldn't do it, like it's fun to do it like a pre-made, like, hey, you're playing with friends and let's try out ranked, but you don't have to go super deep or hardcore into it. It's just this game is very suitable just to have a fun time.
Yeah, it's like cozy is just the right word for it. Sort of thing I'd pop on if I was just chatting on Discord. I play Cinderace whenever I can, and then Pikachu, because I guess I'm just like incredibly boring, and then it will be Greninja and Lucario as soon as I get them. And yeah, I don't have any really like massive thoughts on it. I would recommend it to people like me who've never played a MOBA. I don't think this is going to inspire me to go play Smite, because if the Ninja Turtles can do it, then Pokemon certainly can't. But yeah, it's good fun, and it's free, so you might as well check it out.
Yeah, it's a surprise release that I mentioned at the top that I had never really heard of. Like, I was living under a rock, but it seems like it fit with the style of game better than it might appear on paper. So it'll be interesting to see like how they support this game going forward. And obviously, they have a huge pool of Pokemon they can add to it and all that. And it'll be interesting to see what sort of legs it has. Before we go into the news topics, of which there's not that many, honestly, it's a lot of follow-ups of things that we've kind of broached last week. We do have a couple features that are up on rpgsite.net that I do want to introduce. One of them, yours truly wrote. During this last week, it was the 20th anniversary of the release of Final Fantasy X. And that was my first Final Fantasy game. It was in a lot of ways for me kind of a gateway RPG, a gateway JRPG at least. So I wrote up a little like 1,000 word just kind of feature, just going over what it meant to me and how when I play it as an adult, it means a little bit more than when I played it as an 11-year-old, where I was just kind of like starry-eyed and dumbfounded. So a little bit of a personal kind of recollection of what that game means to me. I put that up on the site.
That was pretty good, well written. Thanks, Mood.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah.
The main thesis of it was that when I'd played it as a kid, I hadn't really experienced loss or grief. I was just young, and and a lot of those things just didn't mean anything to me. But when you play it as an adult, when you've had to say goodbye to some of your grandparents or your old friends or things like that, it means a little bit different. It just hit a little bit different. It resonated in a different way.
Yeah.
So
impressionable lad.
It only means something if you've played Final Fantasy X. So just a heads up on that. Another feature that was up on the site was one that James wrote, and it
Yep.
was about soul sacrifice. So I'll just give you like a couple minutes to talk about what you put up pertaining to that game.
Yeah, I'd like to say that there was also a reason for writing that article, like an anniversary or whatnot, but there wasn't. Just Alex has been wanting us to do more feature type articles, and I was like, well, actually, I've been kind of mulling around in my thoughts on Soul Sacrifice, and I sent him a pitch. He said, yeah, that's good, so published it.
Hell of a game.
Yeah, hell of a game. So obviously, I love Monster Hunter. I've played a ton of Monster Hunter. I've even said on this podcast that I've put over 1,000 hours into Monster Hunter World. So obviously, when you've played Monster Hunter so much, chances are you've checked out the other games. Like, especially myself, since I was a huge Vita fan, I wanted to check out what sorts of games were like Monster Hunter on the Vita. And Soul Sacrifice was one of those interesting ones because first off, it's like one of two games that Concept actually managed to release before they got bought out by Level 5. Like, it was Soul Sacrifice, and then it was Mighty Number 9, which is absolutely odd when you think about it. But yeah, it was
trajectory, you know.
But
I don't know
yeah,
how they got Mighty Number 9 to that.
yeah, it's weird. But I love Soul Sacrifice. The world building, the aesthetic, the soundtrack, the gameplay was the weakest part, but everything else surrounding it is just, it's something else. Like in Monster Hunter, you do like the monsters are iconic because of their designs and because of the weapons and armor you can craft from them, of course. But Soul Sacrifice had a different thing where every monster was originally a person. And they became a monster because of a wish or a desire they had that got warped by this otherworldly pale chalice. And for every one of the monsters that you either sacrifice or save, you actually get access to this backstory for them. And like every single monster in the game has a short story that details like what led to them becoming a monster in the first place. Like, what were they suffering? What did they desire? And it's fascinating because you have what like multi-page long, and for some of these monsters are like a decent sized short story. It's like 10 or 12 pages, and every single one has it. And
It's very much like the elevator pitch I'd say to people is like, if Mirror had a Monster Hunter clone, this would probably be it, because it is dark fantasy, and a lot of it is like grimoire imagery. Like you're like the first thing you see in the game is like this like cursed grimoire, and like it's a really interesting type of game.
But yeah, so I was doing some research on the game when I was writing up the article, and I just looking through the game's credits, it's really depressing how many of the developers that worked on Soul Sacrifice Delta just haven't done anything since. Like, Teruhiro Shimogawa was the director and basically in charge of all of the world building for Soul Sacrifice, which that's basic. And he was like the behind the story. So yeah, like obviously Inafune was credited as being the creator for Soul Sacrifice, but if you actually look into the proper credits, it's clear to say that it was Shimogawa's baby. Like he was behind it, and he hasn't done anything since Soul Sacrifice Delta, and he was still at level 5. Well, he was at level 5. He still was at Concept until last year, where he left. And that's the same thing for a lot of the people that worked on the game. Like many of them just haven't done anything since. Like Japan Studio contributed to the game, obviously, and everyone knows what happens with them. Like, well, what happened? And funnily enough, the only developers that have continued to do anything that worked on Soul Sacrifice were the portion of Marvelous that went on to work on Monster Hunter stories and helped with development of God Eater 3. So it's kind of ironic that a game that, even if in practice it wasn't really competing against Monster Hunter, I don't think so. But on paper, it was obviously kind of designed to fill that gap that the Vita had without any like sort of Monster Hunter game on it. It's kind of ironic that the only developers that have actively been working on games since have either continued to work on Monster Hunter like contemporaries or literally a spin-off series for Monster Hunter.
I think that's the weird kind of shame about that era of video games when it came out was all these games that were trying to do their own take on the Monster Hunter formula, but for a good chunk of the audience, it's like, it's just another Monster Hunter clone. Who has time for that? When you're thinking about Tokiden, Freedom Wars, God Eater,
Yeah,
there's like a Final Fantasy one, the Ragnarok Odyssey.
yeah.
Yeah,
Not
it's just
all of those were those were great. Like Final Fantasy Explorers, I want to say it was. That
I
was
think
not
that
good.
sounds right. Yeah, like
Yeah.
all of them weren't hits, but unfortunately, like the ones that were good, kind of was still it was still lumped in with the ones that weren't good. So it was hard to convince people, hey, this is actually a really awesome one.
Yeah, and obviously, like once Sony got the confirmation that Monster Hunter World was going to be on PS4, even if they had greenlit a Soul Sacrifice 2, they're not going to put that money towards developing it because the whole reason they wanted Soul Sacrifice in the first place was to have a Monster Hunter type game on their platform. And once you actually have Monster Hunter on your platform, they're not going to give a shit about.
Yeah,
about
now that Monster Hunter is back at like these big consoles, like like they were able to like justify, hey, let's get God Eater 3 out, and then after that, there's no new God Eater since.
Well, yeah, and it's a shame because I do feel like with how successful Monster Hunter is, there is enough space for games like it to do well. The problem is just that developers working on those types of games don't develop them to get a slice of the pie. It's like the Call of Duty killer problem or the Halo killer or the World of Warcraft killer thing where it's like they don't publishers don't fund these games to get a slice of the pie. They fund these games to get the slice of the pie. And
Mhm.
when they don't think they can usurp Monster Hunter, or if they don't think that they can usurp Call of Duty or World of Warcraft and stuff like that, once they make their attempt, it doesn't work out, they're just going to give up. And especially now with like Monster Hunter is like a stronger franchise now than it's ever been. Like Monster Hunter World, over 17 million copies sold, and in all likelihood, by the time it's done selling, it'll probably pass 20 million.
This would be the time to like push out one of these, either re-release them or make a new one too, because now more people than ever are interested in the Monster Hunter formula.
Yeah. But anyways, Soul Sacrifice Delta is still my favorite Vita game. I absolutely love it, and I guess the best way to put it is that the article was a bit more of a eulogy than anything else, just because I know damn well that the series is basically dead and there's like zero chance that we'll ever see another one.
Even a re-release,
Yeah.
But you think it's the one that out of all of those Monster Hunter clones, it was the one that, as the title says, deserved better or should have persisted?
Well, it wasn't even because of it being a Monster Hunter clone. It was like my whole argument was that it was sold as a Monster Hunter clone, but if you actually played it, it was very much its own thing.
it's
Yeah.
very different.
But yep, so both of those articles are up on the website. And the last features that we have on the site are all around Genshin Impact 2.0. So we did some guides about the Inazuma region, some guides about the Sakura Bloom locations, and other stuff involved in the quests there. So obviously Chow helped out putting those together, and those are up on the site. In the news/topical section, there really is no key headline. I know I've stated that a few times, but here is something that is a little bit to chew on for fans of certain seemingly dormant Atlus projects. So we talked obviously last week about the big Persona 25th anniversary website / upcoming reveals for that big, tentpole franchise for them. The first one coming, in a couple months in September. But there was also an interview in Weekly Famitsu with Atlus manager Naoto Hiroaka. I probably didn't pronounce it very well, about other Atlus projects that we haven't heard about in a while, or we don't know what to expect from them in the future. So no reveals here, just some teases and just some things to speculate about, in addition to the Persona 25th anniversary stuff. So the two that I want to highlight is that they do say that they will be able to share more news on Etrian Odyssey to everyone as soon as it's possible. And a little bit of a update on the long dormant Project Re-Fantasy, which, as far as I'm aware, unless I missed something, we haven't really seen since its reveal back in 2017 with its initial trailer. I don't know if Adam, if you had some.
The funny thing about Project Re-Fantasy is the last time it actually popped up was in some Etrian Odyssey Nexus DLC, I think, as a portrait. If I remember correctly. Yeah.
I don't even know if it's a portrait or a similar color scheme, but as the art character. I mean, Project Re-Fantasy is made by a new studio, or I don't know, they're not really new anymore, right? A newly established studio like Project Zero, or Studio Zero, something like that, right? At Atlus. And what was sort of weird is that studio then they announced they're working on this Project Re-Fantasy, and then they ended up being the ones behind the Catherine enhanced port, and now they're back on Re-Fantasy, and all we have is some concept art and a teaser trailer, and we're interested. It's got Hashino behind it. He's the former Persona boss, basically. So it's more of it's something different for Atlus. It seems to be more like fantasy. It's not occult and demony like SMT, and it's not modern, world Japan like Persona. So I'm interested to see what that'll be like, but we don't know much about it.
Academy in the game.
Sorry?
Until we have to attend an academy in the game.
Oh yeah, it'll be a school RPG and a high fantasy castle school or something. I don't know.
Shibuya.
Yeah, Etrian Odyssey, Nexus released in 2018, right? Or 19? Not that long ago, a few years ago. Obviously, all those games were on either DS or 3DS, so now the next one is interesting because, it's going to be a Switch game, perhaps? Just a single-screen dungeon crawler RPG? Plenty of those exist, but Etrian Odyssey is sort of unique in that
you draw the maps.
You draw your own maps with the dual screen, so how is that going to work? Will it work? Will it just be different? Who knows? It has never had an HD game. Now, whatever they do, it's going to be an HD game now, finally. I'm interested. I miss Etrian Odyssey, but we'll see.
Yeah, so basically they just said to stay tuned, and for both of those projects, really. So just kind of admitting that they still exist, that they're still in their mind share, but nothing to announce just yet. So just stuff to chew on, to know is that they realize that those have been absent and are aware that people are eager to learn more about them. So
yeah, so what are they saying? They have 5 or 6 development lines and about 10 when you include Vanillaware and other external companies. So right again, new Persona, the new Vanillaware game, whatever Etrian Odyssey is going to be Project Re-Fantasy. That's 4.
So let's count SMT 5. That's obviously the most current. So that's 5.
5.
Trauma Team.
Oh, okay. I'm in.
I'm back.
Interesting.
The Trauma Team is actually one of my favorite games on the Wii. It's actually definitely one of my favorite games of all time.
There was let me see if I can remember it.
I don't know entirely for sure, but they used to have an SMT team and the Devil Survivor team. The Devil Survivor team ended up working on Tokyo Mirage Sessions after the Devil Survivor games. I believe, I'm not confident on this, I believe those teams basically merged to work on SMT5. It's all the SMT people and all the Devil Survivor people are now all on that. And you can even see in SMT5, it's got the Tokyo Mirage Sessions UI. Yeah. They have. I don't know exactly who did the Nocturne remaster. That may not even be internal. That just might be, an outsourced studio. I'm not even sure on that. So,
Speaking of Trauma Center, that reminded me. Credit to Persona Central on this translation. There was this big Famitsu issue that came out this past week. Famitsu had this anniversary and whatnot. Was they had interviews with several people in the Japanese game industry. Apparently, Trauma Center's Second Opinion was one of the 5 most important games that Atlus General Manager of Consumer Software, Naoto Hiraoka, worked on because of its unexpected reception overseas, which emphasized the importance of the overseas market. That's what the tweet says. So apparently, Trauma Center's Second Opinion was a big turning point in Atlus history with its positive reception worldwide. To coincide with the Famitsu anniversary, it was also Atlus's 35th year anniversary as well. So they're kind of celebrating it together. And that's why they went out and spoke about with the Atlus team.
we also know that Vanillaware is working on something, which isn't surprising, but
Yeah, it only take maybe the next decade.
it'll only take another 6 years. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's about how long 13 Sentinels took. But it seemed like that was worth it. So
For sure. Yeah, but yeah, that's Vanillaware is, God bless them, because they're such a small team who still believes in the 2D dream, which I support 100%.
We got a new trailer for the upcoming Lost Judgment. We did talk about this at length about the weird contractual issues with Sega and the Johnny's talent agency involving the PC release. A little bit more down to just pure vanilla marketing. We got a regular trailer for the upcoming console game. A 5-minute trailer that just shows all the different sort of variety of events that you kind of come to expect in an RGG Studios game, from the basic detective work to the mini games to explaining why you play part of the game in a high school as you're undercover as a high school counselor or of some sort, as well as it shows that one of the locations in this game is Yokohama, which made an appearance in Yakuza 7. So kind of a cool little crossover there, because obviously these two games do take place in the same universe. So a big fully featured trailer that I haven't played the original game, so I don't know how it compares to what suite of events were in the original Judgment. But
you can play Sonic the Fighters.
Hell yeah!
Oh yeah, that was funny. Where it's here's an official screenshot from Judgment, and it was just a screen capture from Sonic the Fighters of Sonic fighting Amy. Yeah, so fun trailer. Looks like it's going to be a fun game.
You can definitely see there are enhancements to combat. There's mid combat QTEs almost, so to spice it up. It looks really really fun. They showed all the side active. Well, I don't know if it's all the side activities. We saw boxing, robot battling, motorcycles. It looks crazy. I'm very excited for it. I'm very interested to see how RGG Studio will handle the story, because it seems like the plot is focusing on the very, very, very delicate topic of bullying and being bullied in Scully. So
Right.
We'll see how that shakes out.
Another follow-up from last week, we obviously had the big Shin Megami Tensei story trailer, which introduced a lot of characters, showed a ton of footage, both gameplay and cutscene wise. And a lot of people kind of speculated about, Adam brought it up about how the different characters in the SMT series kind of serve as almost proxies for specific routes in the game, almost equally as much as they are their own characters. We got follow-up information about everyone that was sort of introduced in that trailer, and bios for the different characters that you meet in Shin Megami Tensei V.
They have a Shin Megami Tensei Direct now for this game. That's weird.
Yeah, what are they?
It was formatted like a news, like a report.
Yeah,
and they called it Volume 1, so there's more to come.
And the most surprising thing about this is it had when they released this video, it already supported full English captions. Is already fully subtitled, ready to go from the get go. So that was
it wasn't an English separate listing. It was you used literally the closed captioning feature of the stream to get the English subtitles. But yeah, it introduces all the characters. It shows how they're related to how they protagonist gets involved with him in the Bethel organization, and people are still, I presume, speculating on who ends up, being the proxy for which sort of ending or route in the game.
I think people are assuming that like the glasses guy is the law guy, and then the more like the not Ryuji is the chaos guy.
The
So
stereotype.
Not really.
he's like a bleached hair, doofus.
Yeah, he's some
He's a
weird
streamer.
he's some weird like demon child between like Mark and Ryuji. So I don't.
And he's
Yeah, it says
one thing that's kind of funny. He's a streamer,
Yeah.
and apparently he's like live streaming on his phone when
damn
the
it.
event happened.
I really
Oh,
like
so
him
I
like
didn't
that.
I didn't realize it was on his phone. Like he's doing like the Twitch IRL thing,
Yeah,
or
yep.
whatever. I like it. I
Ah,
also do like how the prime minister is like also like the leader of this organization, and he looks like I'm blanking on the name. I played Devil Summoner, Survivor,
mhm.
and the chaos route in that game had a very similar character. Oh, I'm blanking on the
Yeah.
name. Damn it.
I forget his name
But-
too.
I hate
But,
people because they're like, he looks like a Japanese Bruce Wayne. I'm like, you know what? God damn it! Like I love his just his key visual artwork, Hayao Koshimizu. Oh my god, that is so funny. It is so funny. The interesting thing about this is when we got names for Tao, Yuzuru, Ichiro, and Miyazu. It confirmed that both Yuzuru and Miyazu are siblings.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of a sibling relationship.
Miyaru, we don't know what she does, and actually, it wasn't clear that she was a woman to begin with because she's got kind of like a boyish haircut. But she's a little sister character. She didn't really show up in the trailer outside of one scene, so I don't know what that means.
The person I was thinking of from Devil Survivor was Kaido. So I'm thinking
All right.
Koshimizu from Shin Megami Tensei V, the prime minister, apparently reminds me of Kaido. So that's the point I was trying to make, and I failed.
They also finally clarified, exactly what Magatsuhi skills are, which is, to what everyone guesses is that Magatsuhi bar lets you activate special skills, like ones that can buff you up to full for 3 turns, very fast, or a very special, like crazy attack. And then they confirmed that enemies can use Magatsuhi skills against you as well. So bosses will be interesting. I think the one cool thing that personally for me was, they announced these 2 new demons after the broadcast. Hayatoro, which is a demon dog, part of Japanese mythology. But they finally got mythology from the Philippines. They have Filipino lore in this with Manananggal, which is its design is, it's crazy. You'll get very disturbed by it, but it is pretty lore accurate to what the mythology is behind this Filipino creature. Because it's sort of like this, almost like the boogeyman, except it steals the pregnant women's children and whatnot. And throughout any depiction of the Manananggal, the key feature about it is having a split torso. It doesn't really have a stomach because it's split up in half. So it's
Yeah,
the way
so it looks like a winged
Batwoman.
succubus.
Yeah.
Only the legs and the upper torso are severed.
Yeah, I actually really like it. Like the Doi really,
It puts you on
knocked it out of
edge,
the park.
which I think is kind of the intent. Which is
Oh,
cool.
I'm looking at it now, and I only just got that it's split in half. I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, that's kind of fancy, but that's 2 splits. Wow, that's good design.
Yeah, and they showed a screenshot of it in game. That's in-game model looks awesome. So it's cool.
A lot of the demons look really.
Yeah, Philippines represent. I like it.
Yep.
By the way, just I think it's interesting to note the 2 games we just talked about, Lost Judgment and SMT5, both Sega titles. One's Sega, one's Atlus, right? This is both of these titles getting their worldwide release, simultaneous for the first time. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's
Sega can do that now.
Yeah,
right.
Persona next.
Mhm.
Similar to the SMT follow-up, similar story here with Blue Reflection Second Light. So this game was announced earlier this year in March, just the title card really. We got the big reveal last week or the week before, and kind of have the usual follow-up on some of the characters and voice actors appearing in the game. So the new character that was detailed here was Shiho Kasuga. I don't recognize the voice actors here. I don't know if
A lot
Chow
of
or
a lot of the voice actors in the Blue Reflection Second Light are really new. They are not like veterans
that's
from the
actually interesting.
industry.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it's cool to have new talent working on them. I know like Kyoto Animation really likes to do that with their anime shows. Is they usually for their main characters they like to seek out new talent, which is
What
pretty
was
cool.
the anime called? Was it Sound in Euphorium or whatever?
Yeah, Euphonium. Yep.
Like all the voice actors in that show was really new at the time, but now they're like super famous household names now. So
Yeah.
Because that show did so well. Yeah.
Very, very, very popular. The interesting thing about this new Blue Reflection info is this Shiho Kasuga character is meant to be like some sort of like the key person linking the upcoming Blue Reflection mobile game, which is Blue Reflection Sun, and then this game. So I'm wondering, like, are they gonna somehow localize that Blue Reflection mobile game then? Because this one's coming out west.
Yeah. Otherwise, you have this weird lingering link that doesn't go anywhere for a
or
certain
maybe they're
portion
trying
of
to
the
do
audience.
try this cross-platform thing. It's trying to get people interested in one media so they will buy the other thing, right? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also talk about a couple of the gameplay systems here. They tether together part topes, which are basically areas that appear in the overworld outside the school that the playable cast can explore to get resources and items or whatever. And then it also talks about a story feature called Refnavi. It is a being that appears inside of the girls' smartphones at the same time as these heart topes. So it kind of has this creepy, mysterious, ominous vibe to it about exactly its objective and its allegiance and things like that. So I don't know enough about the story to really dive too deeply into that. But for those that have played the original game or are involved in the story, they were detailed here as well, along with the new character.
They're really trying to just I mean, really trying to rise it up. They're really hoping that this is like the breakout moment for this series. I'm wondering if they'll be successful. It's
Like the first game had potential, it just wasn't really that polished. So I feel like if
it's
they prove it, we might have something here.
it's weird because like I probably mentioned it before, but like as new episodes come out for that Blue Reflection anime, that feels like me and maybe 7 other people on Earth are watching. Like it's like, oh, this isn't bad, Like they actually have ideas here that are it could go somewhere. Like they're
Josh, you do a service to us at RPG Site. So Josh is always keeping up on the different anime adaptations of the games we talk about. Like he's keeping up, or at least I presume he's keeping up with the Scarlet Nexus anime ongoing, about all the different Persona anime projects and whether or not they'll introduce a new one with this big 25th anniversary thing for Royal specifically. So thank you for bearing that burden.
Thank you. Do I get some sort of reward?
You can put
More
it on your business
anime.
card. Anime connoisseur for RPG Site.
Oh,
Anime
boy.
expert.
Oh no.
We did get another character introduction trailer for Tales of Arise. We talked about Laws last week and how it featured an English voice actor I don't care for. I actually don't know who the English voice actor for Rinwell is. This is the mage character that has the owl companion, the owl chick. So this is the fourth of the, presumably 6 character introduction trailers leading up to the September release for Tales of Arise. Just kind of like the last one, pretty vanilla, pretty much what you'd expect. My main comment here
She's the
is
mage
that
character.
right, yeah. So yeah, she fights with a grimoire.
Yeah.
And then the one comment here, and I noticed this in the last trailer too. So it's a deliberate design decision, I presume. But whenever they have the combat chirps, like where they're casting like take that in the name of the spell or whatever, they have this audio effect where it almost sounds like they're shouting from inside a bottle or underwater or something. Like I don't know if it sounds like it's intentional, but it just kind of throws me off whenever I watch these trailers. And it's only present in combat, though maybe even outside of combat, the voice acting was done remotely, so it sounds a bit off. I'm not sure. It just something about just the audio quality of these character trailers.
I
just
think
doesn't
you
sit
might
right
have
with
to.
me.
I think these trailers also have like superimposed music on it, so you kind of have to see how it is in the game. in terms of
Right,
how
they're
the
not
audio
cut. They're
quality
just not
is.
cut out of the.
Watch it be like there's like an in-universe explanation of the whole thing. It's like, oh, whenever battles are conducted in this realm, you all plunge inside an air bubble, which will distort the air pressure in it. So that's why it sounds fucked up.
And just for a quick mention, we do know that there's going to be a live stream set for next week where they're going to discuss the detour systems overview. So things like skits and other like side story event things that are very typical in Tales games. So obviously all the characters are introduced. The premise of the game is known. So this is just more just kind of a feature overview about, secondary stuff that we will learn more before the next podcast.
I have two comments.
Go for it.
One thing that's sort of interesting about these character trailers is that they are only released in English from the European branch. And I even see Japanese websites reporting on these saying, here's for them, overseas trailer on Tales of Arise. So this isn't just like a dubbed, obviously it's dubbed, but it's not just like a Japanese trailer that they translate to English with, ADR. It's like actually the English team creating these trailers. So I found that interesting, right? Two, some of the battle stuff in this Rinwell trailer did look a little bit slow to me. Maybe I'm just being overly paranoid or something, but it did seem a little bit I kind of wish this seemed snappier, but maybe it'll make more sense when I actually play it.
Well, there is some deliberate slow down when she dodges the weapon attacks, like a yeast flash step sort of thing,
like bullet time or whatever when you dodge. Yeah, we'll see.
It's funny that ever since the first gameplay preview of Arise came out, one of the top 3 questions you get from the Tales community is, does this game have skits? What do the skits look like? Please tell me there's skits.
Well, I remember when George played the preview, one of us asked, were there any skits? And he's like, what?
Yeah. And I started, what did I reference? I referenced Like a Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we talked about how backwards that was.
That's right. I forgot we had to use Like a Dragon for him to get it. Oh my god.
We'll know more on Thursday. Yeah, the 29th.
We'll be like, here, George, this is what skits look like.
I played Like a Dragon, I know.
All right, a final trio of news posts here. These are pretty simple ones to wrap up the cast. Monster Hunter Stories 2 has surpassed 1 million units shipped, which is something the original game never did. Very quick success for Monster Hunter Stories 2.
The marketing paid off. The 3 million videos.
All of those story trailers that were 80% similar but cut up in a different order. They did it. Yeah. You did it, Capcom. But really, obviously, Monster Hunter seems to be on a very big upward swing in the West. Catapulted by the success of World, the continued success of Rise, and then Stories 2 just seems like it's going to be I don't know. I don't want to presume too much, but I could see Stories being a fixture as a Monster Hunter spinoff going forward. I wouldn't be surprised to see this.
They're also bringing the first Stories to Apple Arcade as well. I don't know soon, but they announced that it's coming to Apple Arcade. The first Stories.
Oh, nice. The Disgaea series has cumulatively sold 5 million units. Obviously, Disgaea has 6 main entries and a lot of spin-offs and re-releases and complete editions. So some people can speculate exactly which of these contribute to the 5 million unit total. Of course, I saw when we reported on this, someone cheekily but truly stated that's a third of what Gex accomplished. So good going, everybody.
Gex continues winning. All right.
Where's my Gex remaster, guys?
Just buy a PlayStation, man.
But yeah, so it's 5 million total Disgaea. It's unfortunate that it seems like 6 didn't light the world on fire, but I haven't experienced it myself, so I don't really want to judge it too.
Put
3
on Steam. Do it.
Is 3 the only one missing on Steam? Well, other than 6?
Besides 6, yes, and D2. So.
No,
is 3 a dark horse?
I played the first 2 on Steam, and then 4, or at least a version of it, is on Steam, and 5 is as well. So it's just kind of I want to play 3 before I get to 4, but I'd have to go on a different console. I have to do a Vita version, and who wants to play Vita?
Vita version.
Yeah.
How dare you? The Vita is recently deceased. Pay your respects. Oh yeah, I guess that is
too
kind
soon.
of news. This week was the last week that any Vita games were allowed to release on the PlayStation Store.
Oh,
so
shit.
now, officially, Vita no longer means life.
We knew this day was coming.
What does Vita mean now if it doesn't mean life?
death. It's
Oh,
dead.
okay. All right.
No, nothing more poetic than that. There you go.
Sorry, forward.
Oh, I drink this soy milk brand called Vita soy all the time. Does it mean I'm gonna die?
Oh, well, it's nice knowing you, Chow.
Now it does.
Yeah, it didn't before until this week. And then finally, we have a release date for another kind of interesting little indie title coming up. That's Dodgeball Academia. The sports RPG is launching on August 5th for PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. So,
Yeah, I've been playing through it. I'll have a review up when it's closer to launch. It's a pretty cool game so far. I'm really enjoying it. It's a very relaxing sort of small scale RPG. It's like you have RPG stats like in like these real dodgeball matches. So when you hit someone with a dodgeball, that a certain amount of HP will pop out of them, and then there's like status effects that you can imbue with the volleyball. Like there's a fire dodgeball that you can throw out, or you can throw out a shock dodgeball, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'll have more to say on it when it's closer to release.
yeah, it seems like we're kind of in the space where we have a lot of these little interesting original projects that we can kind of have the bandwidth to look at. So it'd be interesting to hear more about Dodgeball Academia.
I feel like for a couple of us, there's also a few games that we can't quite talk about yet. So next week should definitely.
Yeah.
So tease for next week. Can you talk about that game you've been playing?
I guess really quick, I'm not going to say too much, but we did get Fuga Melodies of Steel Code. I have been playing it. There's no embargo, so I can say I've been playing it. Yeah.
But it releases next week, right?
Yeah, it releases next week on the 29th. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll earmark a spot in the next podcast for you to go to town on Fuga.
Yeah, I hope to get some time with it in before we get to that, because there are other releases that are relevant to our outlet as well coming out next week as well. So it's going to be pretty chaotic and a lot mayhem in here potentially.
Man, some of these teases I'm like not even like, wait, what is Josh referring to? I don't know offhand. So I guess I'll have to stay tuned. I have to show up next week. Damn it!
Oh man, the host has to show up next week.
Am I the host? I just speak first. That's how I see it. But
you are the host.
So no, thanks for joining. We're obviously we've wrapped up here. So it was a lot of interesting talks about a bunch of games we don't normally get to highlight, and some surprises like Pokemon Unite that I did not know existed before like 2 days ago. It was cool to hear your thoughts on Cris Tales, some of the thoughts on the Soul Sacrifice, and all the news that are coming out in a slow period of the year. So lots of stuff to look forward to in August and September. Hope you're all keeping cool, because it's been, for most of us, incredibly hot through these summer months. You can always visit us online at rpgsite.net. We have our YouTube channel. Nothing's gone up on there recently, but we do have a few things in the works for our RPG site on YouTube. And we're in the usual places on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Just search for RPG site. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us then, stay safe. Talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.